Welcome to A1TV, the Mark Show, and another really interesting guest and a person I met way back in SEN days, back in the 2000s, but we'll talk about it a bit later. Jason Richardson, welcome to A1TV, the Mark Show. Richo, where do I find you right now, and why do I find you there right now?
G'day, Stoney. Great to be with you, mate. Hello, everyone who's tuning in. Believe it or not, I'm in hotel quarantine in Sydney, the Marriott Hotel in Circular Quay. For those that aren't aware, in Australia, we've got very strict rules in regards to COVID. So to give you an idea, I've just been in Tokyo for the Olympic Games. I've had 26 negative COVID tests in the last 40 days leading into, plus every day in Tokyo, yet through the Australian, and I'm fully vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. Yet with our regulations in Australia, you get off the plane, sent straight to a hotel here by the army and the police, locked in here and have not been out of this room for 12 days. So I've got 2 more days to go. So I'm bouncing off the walls a bit at the moment, Stoney. So it's a great thrill to be able to chat to someone.
Hey, Richo, let's take it right back because you and I met in SEN days, but obviously you were famous for the 1993 stall gift and people know you as that. But did it start way back from there and probably your athletic prowess and where it started for you as far as, first of all, your athletic abilities and career? How did that start way back?
Well, I think growing up as a young guy in Melbourne, there was 3 things that I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to play AFL footy, ideally for Carlton, ideally kick a goal after the siren in a grand final. That's what I always aspired to do. Number 2 is I wanted to run for Australia at Olympic Games. I loved everything about the Olympic Games and I was a pretty naturally talented and fast young athlete as a teenager or even pre-teenager. And number 3 is I wanted to be the next Bruce McAvaney. Now, I just wanted to be involved in sport, elite sport anywhere. So as I went through school, I was a really late developer at school. Believe it or not, in year 12, I hadn't reached puberty and I was 4'11" and 41 kilos as a 17-year-old in year 12, which was not pleasant when you're in all boys school, I can assure you of that. So any late bloomers out there watching this, don't worry, it'll eventually happen to you. So that sort of stunted my sporting career for a couple of years. Eventually I did grow, put on some size, tried to play footy, played a fair bit of A-grade amateur footy, wanted to play AFL footy, nowhere near good enough. So my aspirations were put to a side and I actually, believe it or not, Stoney, I was down playing footy at De La Salle and A-grade amateurs when I went to school there. And our running coach there ran 3rd in the 1976 stall gift. He was a passionate athletics guy and he grabbed me one day and said, mate, this footy stuff, you're pretty good, but you could actually be really good if you went back to your athletics. And that was all I needed to hear because I was desperate to be really good at something. So I started training with him, shelved the footy career, and literally from the moment he made that, had that conversation with me, it was less than 18 months later, I was a stall gift winner. Therefore, I gave up my work. I was a full-time working in sports administration. I gave everything up, went back to uni so that I could concentrate full-time on athletics and see if I could give track and field a really red hot go. I spent 6 years racing on the circuit, trying to be a good athlete. I met my girlfriend who became my wife, who was a good athlete. She went to 2 Olympic Games. I was sort of in the mix, sort of a tier 2 guy, running around at national level and running a bit internationally, never anywhere near good enough. But, you know, I tried my backside off, trained within an inch of my life, diet, the works, but eventually wasn't good enough. So therefore I've got 2 down, Stoney. So then I had to concentrate on the 3rd one. And that was, how do I possibly get into the media? And then a few things just happened. And one of them being SEM where I met you and things fell into place.
So I suppose that we go back to the stall gift and, 1993. On the day of the race, did you think at that point, I've got a chance here? I don't know. How much were you off and how were you going into the race?
Yeah, so I was off what is called the novice handicap. As soon as you start in the sport, they give you a novice handicap, which is 7.5 metres. Those that are unfamiliar to the race, between 0 and 10 is the handicap. And unlike horse racing where they handicap the horses when they give them weight's not appropriate for athletes. So therefore they do it by distance. And doing it by distance, the aim is that eventually all of the athletes will go across the line together. It's set up from to give everyone a chance, but also it's set up from a betting point of view as well. Huge prize money. The store give $50,000 prize money, richest sporting, richest running race, professional race that they have in the world, and it has been for forever. So it's got nearly 150 years of tradition. So that year, Stoney, I was basically brand new to the sport. Started only a couple of months before the store gift the year before. I won their 100-metre race there, which is the novice. For those that had never won a race, they could go in. That's like a maiden, if you like, in horse racing. I won that, but I was still eligible for that handicap of 7.5. So my coach decided to just concentrate on trying to win the store gift. So, mate, I spent the whole year just waiting, just training. But what we also did is I did a lot of time trials with my training group. I was really, really fortunate. I had two guys who were in the final the year before who came second and came fourth. One of them had come second a couple of years beforehand. So Joe Marvin and Tim Mason were their names. I trained with them. So therefore they would go and race every week and see how, and they would be really competitive off their handicaps. I would do time trials and I would be giving them a big head start and beating them. Yet when it came to the store gift, they had to give me a big head start. So fair to say we were pretty confident by the time the store gift came around on Easter Monday in 1993.
While doing some research for the interview, you actually ran some races in Britain and also Paran, Smithton in Tasmania, Burnie Gift. So you obviously won a lot of races around that time, around that period.
Once I'd won the store gift, then it was, it was time to show how good I was as opposed to just waiting all year for one race. So because once you win the store gift, naturally your form's exposed, you've made a big chunk of money, so your handicap gets reduced. But I had a lot of fun. I came back the following year at Stawell and my aim was to try to win the back markers there because there'd only ever been one other person in history in 140 something years had been able to win the 100, win the gift, and then come back and win the 120 back markers for the top 6 guys that are selected to go in that. So I joined John Dinan there, which was a huge thrill for me. Went and raced in Europe, which was awesome. Went and raced in Scotland, did the pro circuit there, plus also started to run in the amateurs. I got the great privilege of running against Michael Johnson, Ben Johnson, Carl Lewis, Linford Christie, and they've all got something very much in common. Stoney,
gold medals.
I only saw their backsides. I never got in front of them.
So how long did your running career go for? Because we'll talk about the meter in a moment, but there's a couple listening who are probably going many different directions. But how long did your running career go for?
Well, because I got there so late, because I wasted so many years doing footy, I didn't get really, there's the store part to the store gift, which I won when I was 23. So the pro running things from sort of 22 and 23, but then sort of from 24 to 28, I was then full-time. Let's train as hard as I possibly can and see if I can make an Olympic Games team. I wasn't good enough for that. So that was sort of the really serious part of it. Leading into the store gift, of course, it's serious, but I was still at a full-time job. But then once I then won that actually A, funded me, and B, gave me the belief with some great support from your parents to have a red hot crack at it because it costs a lot of money. We saw that during the Tokyo Olympics. So many of these athletes aren't sponsored. I know it's sexy during the Olympics and everyone gets behind our great athletes, but other times they do it really tough financially. So it's hard to make a living out of it. You're on the dole, so it's hard to make that as a priority. So by the time I got to about 28 and I was giving up a lot of things and I was still living at home, I said, listen, let's be brutally honest with myself. I'm not going to be an Olympian and it's time to, and I got a really good job offer back into the corporate world. It's time to get back and sort of take the foot off the accelerator for running, and then got back into the marketing world and through a couple of little twists of faith, got involved in media as well.
A couple of points I picked up a little chat you just had. You said you were a Carlton supporter. You wanted to play with Carlton. Now I know you're a passionate Hawthorn supporter. No, you're not a Hawthorn. Who do you follow then?
Carlton, the mighty Blue Baggers,
why does it tell me that someone says you're a Hawthorn man? Anyway, something got me mixed up between Hawthorn and Carlton.
I'll tell you why. It's probably because of friendship. One of my great mates is Shane Crawford, who probably tells everyone I barrack for Hawthorn. And I did a lot of work with Daniel Harford, who's a bloody Hawthorn man as well. But always been a Carlton man, mate. I do a bit of work for the footy club nowadays, a little emceeing. And as you know, you do a bit of that space. Footy clubs don't tend to pay all that well, so I only do it for the mighty Carlton Footy Club. Mate, I had the privilege of being a young guy who grew up and can remember the halcyon days of the early 80s, into mid-90s. And I've got 3 daughters, and at the moment they all look at me and go, why do we barrack for Carlton? And that's hard to answer.
Now on that, so you did marry an athlete because you married Kate Anderson, who obviously is in the 1998 Commonwealth Games. So was that a bit of a look across the water and the romantic type scenario happened, Richo, with runner with runner? How did that work?
Yeah, it was actually, we met at uni, believe it or not. Both of us had gone back to uni. Kate she was an outstanding junior, got injured a lot, so then had a 2 or 3 year period where she was close to giving up athletics and changed university is. So she's a bit younger than me. And then I was going through the next phase of my life, going back to uni so I could study while I was being a full-time athlete. We were working under David Parkin at Deakin University in a sports management and sports coaching and sports sort of physiology degree. So we were working away there, and then Kate got the passion back through athletics. I like to tell her it was because of me, but she made the team in 96, broke the Australian record in the 1,500 metres that had stood since 1972, Jenny Orrs. She broke the 5,000 metre record in Oslo. She made a semi-finals at Atlanta. She won a Commonwealth gold medal in 98 in the 5,000, and then she ran in Sydney as well before deciding to retire to have a family. So she's by far the most talented member of our family athletically.
Now, while you say that, you've got 3 daughters, Ruby, Miller and Cleo. Is there any skill set or any athletic abilities? Probably mentioned just then, but is there any abilities, and what are they into?
It's interesting because Ruby, my eldest, she's represented Australia in gymnastic aerobics, travelled over to America representing Australia there with my middle daughter, Miller. So they both went in the gymnastics and then eventually morphed into different aspects of that. Ruby's now studying as a physiotherapist, so she's got the brains in the operation. Miller, our middle daughter, is very fast. She's got the speed. She could actually be a seriously good athlete if she ever put her mind to it, but being a middle child at the moment, even though I was a middle child, she's sort of just going along under the radar at the moment, concentrating on her studies. But our youngest, Cleo, is very much interested in athletics, and she's only pretty new to it. But last year, as a 14-year-old, she competed in the under-16s in athletics and won the Victorian 800 and 1,500 metre titles, and then went to the Australian champs and got bronze medal in both events. So she has a bit of talent if she wants to do it. It's up to her whether she wants to do it. She's probably more talented than her mother and father at the same age, but whether or not she wants to keep going with it, it's up to her.
I suppose, Richo, let's move on to the next phase of your life, because you and I met, I think it was maybe early 2000s, I think it was, and your media career has really blossomed. I'm really, to sit back, and I remember the old days, we used to do a thing at SEN called the panel show, where we'd go out to RSLs and pubs and we'd, do a little panel show, and you'd host the program sometime. I used to say to some of the guys, that bloke there's got a lot of ability. So where did the media aspect come into play? Where did it start for you?
Well, it started, I suppose, as an athlete. I was getting interviewed a lot as an athlete. So therefore, really, I had some interest in that space and some sort of flamboyance. But really, my big break came. So I was working as a marketing manager for Oakley Sunglasses. And in 2000, I was just finishing up my athletic days, yet I was still great mates with a lot of the athletes. But I was running marketing for all of our sports marketing in Asia Pacific for Oakley Sunglasses. Yeah. And Oakley Sunglasses were big then. You think about Shane Warne, you think about so many of the big athletes that were wearing sunglasses while they were competing. And I hired the North Bondi RSL as like a hospitality house for our great athletes like Addo Bolden and Maurice Green and all our great rowers, the Awesome Foursome, whoever, once they finished their sport, they could come and hang out at our hospitality house. So a great mate of mine is Matty White, who was working at Channel 10 at the time with a company, with a show called Sports Tonight, you might remember.
Yep, I do.
Anyway, so I was convincing Matty that maybe you should, because they didn't have the rights to any of the venues, because Channel 7 had the right, maybe you should come down to our Oakley house and base yourselves there, and we'll do a whole lot of interviews. So he came down, he brought his producer with him from Sports Tonight. Anyway, Matty and I are carrying on like idiots, like you and I are carrying on now. And this producer out of nowhere, his name was Craig Reynolds. I haven't met him since, but I credit him with giving me a break. Out of nowhere, he says, do me a favour, pretend you're interviewing Matt White right now. So I, go into, welcome to Sports Tonight. I'm here with Matthew White, who's just won an Olympic gold medal in the 100 metres. And Matt, incredible performance. Let's get into your headspace leading into the Olympic 100 metres. Take us through your mindset, blah, 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 and your blocks. Have this interview. So he just says, rightio, we won't need to bring a reporter down. We'll send a camera to you, and every night, live on Sports Tonight, you can do an interview, and it's up to you. You pick whoever you want. So I said, rightio. So while I was doing my Oakley work, I'd come and set up at the Bondi Surf Life Saving Club. Channel 10 would send a camera down, and I'd grab an Awesome Foursome guy, or Kyle Vanderkype, or Patrick Johnson, do a buddy dog and pony show, and from there, as you know, Stoney, things just start to happen. Doors open, people see that and go, that's interesting. That guy's pretty good at that. I then did another show for Channel 10 called Inside Sport TV, believe it or not, where I did a whole lot of interviews with athletes. That then took off. Then I started doing a little bit of radio. SEN asked me to do an action sports show. Rod Law asked me to do that. So I started doing that. We were starting Friday night at 11 o'clock. I was doing an hour on action sports, surfing, skating, snowboarding, etc. We came after a show called The Dribblers, which Andrew Gaze and Nigel Purchase hosted. So I got to meet Gazy, and a young Matt Thompson was the producer there. And that started my journey on SEN. And the door opens, and hopefully, you've got to have the talent to walk through it, and away I went.
So how did the racing part come into play, the horse racing?
So the racing element came in because my grandmother gave me my first betting account when I was 10. God love her. No longer with us, but she was saying, she was in a racing family. She had two brothers who were trainers. She had another brother who was a horse owner. I've got a host of cousins who have been jockeys all down in Tassie. Now, I left when I was 4 months old. So for all of our holidays when we were young kids, we would always go to Tassie to see our extended family. And for me to stay with my mum's parents, my grandparents, always surrounded by racing, always surrounded by the vernacular of racing. And that's the key. So I had a passion about it, always had a passion for racing. I could talk the talk. Plus also through my grandmother, I loved to have a bet. So therefore I was always involved in it. So then when I was starting on SEN, various different shows pop up, as you remember. We were doing, we got 24 hours to fill. So suddenly, one of the shows wants someone to talk about racing, and they heard me talking and thought, it's interesting and sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And once again, it's about opportunities. Dr. Turf, John Rothfield, TVN had a Friday night program at Moonee Valley, and the main host on a Saturday said, I don't want to do Friday nights because I've got to prepare for Saturdays. So they gave it to Dr. Turf's company. He looked around. He was looking for a young person to do some interviews. Emma Friedman did some, I did some. And next thing you know, they used me more and more often, and then TVN wanted to use me more, and away it went.
Now, I'm a big, Richard, I'm glad we're talking about this because as you've evolved over the years in media, the BBL and cricket, and I'm thinking, Richard's even gone into cricket. So the cricket thing, it looks a lot of fun to do the cricket. So you sound like a natural doing the cricket.
Love cricket because, like you, growing up, this was the days for some of our younger audience. When we were growing up, there was footy in the winter, and the moment the footy stopped, it was straight away cricket. And cricket season grabbed you during the summer. World Series cricket, I was a really youngster there, so highly influential. Bang, suddenly World Series cricket came. That lit up my life. Dennis Lilly with a big hairy chest and the bouncing in with the gold chain. Everyone was trying to do leg cutters, and mate, it was something that I absolutely loved. Due to being an athlete, unfortunately, cricket and I didn't get to play a lot. Backyard cricket, genius, especially outside off stump. Pitch it short, I'll dispatch anyone. Unbelievable on the square cut, because that's the way our backyard was set up. So therefore, mate, I've always, I was one of those nerds that used to sit there and score during a test match on a day watching Channel 9's coverage. So being a Channel 7 employee and Big Bash, not for Test cricket, but Big Bash, they wanted to do things a bit different. I pride myself on facilitating conversation. I think that's my role. People aren't interested in my views. They want to hear from Ricky Ponting or Brad Hodge or Brendan McCallum or Damien Fleming or Lisa Stalaker or Julia Price, Mel Jones, Elise Villani. They want to hear from the experts. So my role is purely host, get in and out of the various ad breaks, call the action, but at all times allow the opinion of the superstars. So love doing it, mate. Can't wait for the summer. Absolutely love the cricket.
It looks like a lot of fun, Richo. The entertainment factor, because BBL is obviously a fast-paced game. It's good for the kids, families when we can go. But just the high pace or high octane of the sport and the commentary is a really good mix. It works really well.
Yeah, and that's our mantra. You've summed it up perfectly because, look, we know there's a lot of games, and also we know that there's a lot of people, say Melbourne people, who spend the summer down on the peninsula, either peninsula. They spend the day at the beach, they come home, they hopefully get around their family and friends when one day we'll be able to get back to a normal life. Get around their family and friends, put the cricket on. Now, they're not necessarily Melbourne Stars or Melbourne Renegades fans or Sixers or Thunder fans in Sydney. They may just be cricket fans, so they want it entertaining. For them, it might just be magenta versus green, and they just want to see the big hitting of Marcus Stoinis. They want to have it. They want to listen to the commentary. They want to laugh when Grace Harris, our very quirky Australian player, Brisbane Heat player, is singing songs to us. Whatever it may be, they want to get inside that action, and that's what we try to do, and also have a lot of fun, because listen, there's a lot of serious stuff at the moment. Tune on the news, mate. God, a lot of serious stuff. Let's have fun out there, people.
One last one. We'll go into one last Tokyo, Richo. The greatest event, the biggest event in the world, and Jason Richardson gets a Guernsey. He gets a Guernsey to go to Tokyo. Tell the viewers how long ago the preparation started and the event inside Tokyo. Obviously, you've talked about, obviously, in isolation, in recovery. But just tell us about the lead up and the event and what you got to experience as far as Tokyo goes, Richo.
So Tokyo obviously was delayed for a year. So yeah, I was set up about a year beforehand. I was going to be one of the people on the ground. We were going to have a lot of people on the ground with Tokyo 2020. Tokyo 2020 Mark II in 21 was going to be very heavily studio based for our coverage on Channel 7. But with 45 channels, the viewer at home had a possibility to flick around. My role is really simple there, and that is to try to tell the stories of the athletes. So I'm sent out there. I did a number of hosting, but also just trying to tell the stories of the sports, because a lot of people suddenly tune into athletics or road cycling or triathlon, some of the sports I covered, or surfing, and want to know the stories of the sports and the stories of the athletes. So that was my role. And living in Tokyo was fascinating, Stoney, compared to what we're living in here. I mean, there were 6,000 cases a day there, yet people wear masks, but everything's open. They are very much roll up your sleeves, get vaccinated, but we're going to live with this virus, so we're just getting on with it. Now, they don't talk about it a lot. There's not wall-to-wall coverage in regards to COVID. COVID's not really discussed. I watched the news there with a translator. COVID's not really mentioned. The numbers are not mentioned. Vaccination numbers are mentioned, but the actual amount of people who've got it are not really mentioned. So they're living with it with a different mindset. Look, I never felt unsafe there, but the saddest thing was covering Olympic Games without their whole community getting in around it. I've been lucky enough to go to a number of Olympic Games, some as a spectator, some trying to me in the team and not good enough, but then watching my girlfriend who became my wife, some working on it like I did in 2000. I was hosting in 2016 in Rio, but based in Sydney. I was on the ground in Pyeongchang for the Winter Olympics in 2018. And I know what an Olympic flavour can be for a city where it just engulfs the city. That was totally gone in Tokyo. Tokyo had no Olympic flavour at all. Kids didn't get time off school. Kids were going to school right next to the entrance to the main stadium. How surreal. You're walking in, if anyone experienced Sydney in this country, think about walking into the main stadium and normally there'd be 100,000 people, a hive of activity, bands going on. There were kids walking there in their school uniforms, just going into school right next to where I was going in with my backpack going in, about to cover an Olympic Games. So it was very, very surreal. Looking back on the highlights, mate, I mean, track and field's huge for me. What Safan Hassan was able to do, Ethiopian-born, races for the Netherlands. She won a 5,000 metres on the second night, woke up the next morning after about 4 hours sleep in 35 degrees and 90% humidity, had to run a heat of the 1,500 metres, tripped with a lap to go. By the time she picked herself up, she was 70 metres behind the pack. There was a pack of 10. First 5 go through to the next round in the 5,000 metres, head down, took off, looped around them, won her way into the semi-final, won her semi-final, ran in the final, got bronze in the final of the 1,500 metres, backed up the next day, ran in the 10,000 metres and won a gold medal. 2 golds and a bronze, and a performance we'll never, ever forget. And then you think about some of the great human stories. For me, surfing, you think about the podium at the men's surfing event. Owen Wright got a bronze medal for Australia. He got the first Olympic medal because the bronze medal before the gold. He got the first Olympic medal in surfing. 5 years earlier, he had had a massive brain injury at Sunset Beach where he had a huge fall. He had a year living indoors without any light because his brain couldn't handle sunlight. He had to learn how to talk, how to walk, eventually learn how to surf. 5 years later, he wins an Olympic bronze medal, silver to the local, which was an unbelievable result for a guy who was born to do it, and gold to a guy who's in his 30s now, Italo Ferreira, who comes from extreme poverty in Brazil, and he learned how to surf where his dad didn't have enough money for a surfboard, so gave him the lid of his esky when he was fishing, and he learned how to surf on the lid of an esky. How bloody good sport, Stoney.
That's a great story, Richard. And I'll finish off by great story, by the way. It's a fantastic one. I want to finish off by telling me a day in the life of Jason Richardson at Tokyo. So what time did it start, and what time did it finish, and what time do you have to back up?
Okay, so when I'm doing track and field, so I've done a year of research, follow the stories of these athletes, work out a way, and following the story is one thing, but actually then working out how you can tell it when you've got a producer yelling in your ear, mate, you got 30 seconds, hurry, 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 hurry. You've got to try to tell that story in a succinct way, in a cool, casual way, while at the same time interviewing the athlete, listening to what they're saying. So trying to tell those stories was something that I obviously practiced a lot. But then we get to an Olympic Games, wake up at 5 o'clock, you quickly go to breakfast. You got to have all your food, obviously, in a very sanitized way there, because we're in a COVID bubble, if you like. And we were getting to the track. We were picked up at 6:10 every morning, heading out to the track, even though the session didn't start until 10 o'clock in Tokyo. The Channel 7 wanted me to do a story, a preview an hour beforehand. So I was doing that. So I had to get into, makeup and get all set up there. So I was doing that sort of at 8:30, sit around in the mix zones, 35 degrees, do the normal interviews, finish that at around 1 o'clock, drive back to the hotel, go back through all the COVID protocols, get a rest for about an hour, hour and a half, and then go back to the stadium to do it at night, finish that whole process again by about midnight, get back to your hotel about 1 a.m. and then 4 hours later, wake up and do it again and do that for about 15 days, mate. It's easy.
Jason Richardson, thanks for joining on A1TV, the Mark Show. Jace, haven't got long to go now where your hours are nearly up with you. Is it home now? Is it you get out of your hours and you go home? Is that what it's your wife's looking forward to seeing you?
So I get out of here on Wednesday morning, so in about 48 hours time, and then jump on a plane, and Melbourne will hopefully let me in because I'm quarantining in Sydney, and then get back to work, Group 1 racing on Channel 7 on Saturday. So, Stoney, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Great to catch up, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for the show, and been great having you, and enjoy the last few hours, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.